Okay, members of the media, I have 5:30 p.m., so we'll go on ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us on this Zoom conference today. As you know, at 1 o'clock today, it was announced that Shane Lyons was named the NACDA Athletics Director of the Year, something that we're all very proud of. And I figured that you all would like to have a chance to talk with him extra. So we'll start with our first question with Greg Hunter.
So Shane, just talk about the award. First of all, we'll give you a chance to talk about what an honor that is.
Well, it's a true honor, Greg, and there's a lot of fingerprints that go onto this award, and it's being an athletic director, you take the good and the bad, and this is the good. And I have a lot of great people that's surrounded myself with from my senior staff and the entire staff at the West Virginia Athletic Department that have helped make this a reality, and I can't thank them enough. It's been quite a year, and to be named this during this year, especially, it's always going to be an honor, but I think it's more of an honor this year. For me personally, just knowing what a year ago, it really looked like, and making it through this past year of the pandemic and all the challenges that we have had. So, it's without saying, I'm very humbled by receiving the award and what it means, to our university and to our department.
Our next question comes from Kevin Kinder.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
I wonder, can you zero in one or two of the most difficult challenges? I mean, I know there's been so many that kind of all fall under those umbrellas, but were there one or two that when you started looking at it, we're going, wow, this one or these are going to be really tough?
Yeah, again, Kevin, I think it all started a year ago when we were out here, and I'm in Kansas City right now, at the basketball tournaments, and we started having meetings, and as you all know, it was ultimately decided to cancel the tournaments, and everybody head home, and that really was the start of it. And so I think the biggest decisions, once we got home, we were learning more about the virus, and again, it was globally, and what that meant. And then it was shutting down the university, sending all of our student athletes home. Then people were talking, well, maybe this will last for a month, and you get to bring student athletes back. And so that was probably the most difficult of, sending those student athletes home, not knowing there were so many unknowns at that point. And not knowing, it was a week, 2 weeks, a month, ended up being 2 months before we could have them back on campus. And we did that slowly. So that was really challenging, and just, came to a screeching halt. And then the next was probably in the summer. And, we've all had a chance to talk about this, but it was whether we were going to play football or not. And, we were, as a Big 12 conference, along with the ACC and SEC, were the three out there that had not made a decision. And, there was a lot of pressure on the Big 12 of, what's the future look like for football. And, Dr. Gee, I give him a lot of credit, and other CEOs of Big 12 institutions, to ultimately making the decisions and putting the protocols in place to be able to have a safe environment for our student athletes and coaches to compete. So once we got over that hurdle, you continued holding your breath throughout the whole year so far to make our goals. And my goal from the beginning was to have the opportunity for our student athletes to practice, compete, and go to classes. And, so far that's we've been able to do that. So that's been a definite goals that were reached.
We'll take our next question back to Greg Hunter.
So Shane, I think it was a year ago tonight, at least the quarterfinal or the first round of the Big 12 tournament was the last basketball at that point. Preconceived notions that you had at that point about what it would be, and how much did that change as you moved into, June, July?
Yeah, not really, Greg, you didn't really know. And, we had heard about the COVID-19 and what it meant, but to know what we know today and looking back, there was just so many unknowns as we approached this, and it was just a matter of, you know, trying to have the utmost safety in mind as we decided, you know, a year ago, I guess tomorrow morning, late morning, to shut it down and start sending teams back home. And then, you know, once we got into the spring semesters, you know, and trying to learn more about it and, you know, the spread and what it meant and, you know, how it was impacting people that had the virus. You know, again, I think the biggest news that came out, you know, during the summertime was that the virus was causing heart conditions and myocarditis. And what did that mean for our young athletes? And then those were some of the protocols that we ultimately put in place, that if an athlete contracted the virus, that before he or she returns, they have to go through our conditions of testing, you know, through the heart and echocardiograms and different things like that to make sure that they're healthy to return. And, you know, so there was just so many unknowns as we approached that. But the important thing that we did was, it was just held steady to what we were going to do. We didn't panic through the situation. We just kept on saying, how do we keep moving forward without, you know, going backwards? And that's what we did. And you know, we've had success, and I've been, you know, fortunate to be part of that in the decision making, you know, not only within the conference, but nationally to have athletics continue.
We'll move on to Joe Bricado.
Shane, you share this honor with Rob Mullins at Oregon, another West Virginia guy. What have your interactions with him been like over the years, and how significant is it to have another guy with WVU ties on this award?
Yeah, I haven't had a chance, Joe, to talk to Rob yet, but you know, I did see that, and that is a great honor. Obviously, two graduates of West Virginia University in the CPAS college, so it is pretty special. You know, I've stayed in touch with Rob over the years. We were, you know, separated by a couple years. I'm older than he is. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or bad, but you know, we had a chance to connect when he was at Maryland and I was at the ACC, and that's been probably 20 years ago, if not longer. So we've stayed in touch just as colleagues over the time period, and been on a couple panels throughout the years together, and obviously run into each other at various events. But you know, again, it's pretty special for West Virginia University to have myself and Rob being part of that, and you know, it says a lot for our sport management program at West Virginia.
We will go back to Kevin Kinder.
And this whole year has done a lot to spotlight mental health of student athletes and support services for them. What have you done for your mental health to try to get away? I mean, your calendar has been so busy. It's hard to imagine, you know, having that little bit of free time you need.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate you saying that, Kevin. But you know, again, I go back. You know, I'm starting my 7th year at West Virginia, and you know, I go back on that time period, and you know, thank Dr. Gee and the Board of Governors for giving me this opportunity, you know, to come back home and serve the university in this role as Director of Athletics. You know, along with my peers, it's been a hard year. I mean, this job is tough enough the way it is, and let alone with a pandemic and trying to manage everything that we are. But you know, I give a lot of credit to my staff, as I've said before, of working together on this. There's been many times that you know, we say you have to laugh or not crying. So you know, we had to work through some of these issues. You know, and I also give a lot of credit to my family. You know, they've been my rock and support, you know, throughout my whole athletics career, and you know, my wife gives a lot of support and understands the role of this you know, this position and what it takes. And as I mentioned, it's tough enough, you know, without COVID and the pandemic, but you know, with this and understanding the hours that we put in on the conference calls, et cetera, you know, a year ago, you guys had asked the question about being here. A year ago, I didn't know what Zoom was. Zoom was that show that I watched growing up, out of Boston, and now Zoom is like, just second nature to all of us. So, it's been a very unique year, but, at the same time, there are rewards to it. This is a special honor. And like I said, this is special because of just what we've been through, and probably extra special. But it's my own mental health. It's just been a matter of just having the support group there, and just, making sure that I continue to exercise and do different things I need to do along the way, just to make sure I stay healthy.
We'll go back to Greg Hunter.
So Zoom was your TV show, electric company. You didn't like that one, huh?
I did like that one, yeah. I knew you would know that, Greg.
Yeah, I'm the one old enough. Hey, so was there a point, it was probably last summer, I mean, you're nearing the end of basketball season. I mean, postseason starts in an hour for the Big 12. So it looks like you're going to get there. You've gotten through most of football. Was there a point in the summer that you didn't think any of this would come about?
Yeah, I mean, I without a doubt, I think it was probably late July, Greg, early August, when I think it was called the medical group that came out with the myocarditis studies, and there was a lot of people hitting pause. Obviously, the Pac-12 and the Big Ten decided they were not going to play football. So yeah, there was points there that, and a lot of discussions behind the scenes of, what does this look like? And as you all know, we talked about, just the financial ramifications, even at the end of last year, which ended up being over $5 million loss for the athletic department, as a result of last year's tournament being canceled. And then what was the financial, aspect of it going to look at, moving forward. And so, there was a lot of concern there, but, Kevin asked the question about, my mental health, what came to the forefront. And, again, I think in this job, you're a servant leader, and meaning who I serve as student athletes, and my discussions with those student athletes, Greg, was constantly, we want to compete. We want to be able to practice. So I felt it was my job, to try to make that happen in the safest way. And so we got the appropriate, people, the medical people around the table, and saying, how can we do this and do it with the utmost safety in mind, and knowing that we could have to hit pause, or we may have to pivot, but let's just not, pull the rug out from underneath of us and say, we're not going to compete. So that's what we did, and that's probably the most gratifying thing about this past year. We just kept moving forward and had a successful year in football. We did have our bumps in the road, and I think I talked to some of you all as the media that at one point the media wanted to talk about how many games were being put on pause and not played or postponed, and I'm like, why don't we talk about the positive, how many games are being played? We still finished over 85% of the games that were scheduled in football. If you told me that in early August, I would have taken that, at any time. So that's kind of basically where we finished. And the same thing in basketball. We still have a month to go here in the NCAA, and the conference, I think, has a great plan. It's still kind of the bubble that we're working off of. But, again, it's not been perfect. But when you look back at all of it, that's the most gratifying thing that you can look at, is saying we made it, this far. We, barring any issues here in the next coming weeks, we're going to make it through, our two biggest revenue sports season, and giving the athletes the opportunity to do what they love, and that was to practice and compete and attend classes. So, I don't lose focus of that, and that's where we've met our goals moving forward.
I
Shane,
believe, Greg, I believe you had a follow-up.
Yeah, follow up. And about the myocarditis, obviously this disease has had some horrendous outcomes, but I haven't heard as much about that myocarditis lately. Do you know of any studies that have found that athletes have become susceptible to it? I know there were a couple of cases very early they talked about, but it doesn't seem to be in the news much lately.
No, and a lot of the institutions, Greg, had gone through the heart monitoring when returned to competition. And again, we had to take the utmost concern and do what we felt was necessary to make sure that the health and safety of our student athletes was at the forefront. But I know from what we've done here at West Virginia, as well as other conference institutions, not only in the Big 12 but nationally, it doesn't appear that that raised as big as risk that they thought it was going to early on, which knock on wood is a good thing.
Any further questions for Shane, please use the raised hand feature and we'll get you called on. Our next question is going to come to Kevin Kinder.
Shane, one final one. I think I've asked you this a long time ago, but it seems germane again in light of everything that you've been through. Do you get a chance now to watch games and appreciate them more, just as as a fan? Is that kind of a little bit of escape from everything also? And how much you're looking forward to this game tonight as kind of an end to that year circle?
Yeah, that's a good point, Kevin. And I think it is rewarding to just be able to step back and, think that you had a small piece in all this big puzzle of putting it together and games being played. As I mentioned earlier, the easy decision last July or August would have been, let's, pull the plug on this thing and stop all competitions, and let's look at next July, and start competitions back up. And I wasn't willing to do that after having the conversations with some student athletes about what they wanted to do. So, I know there's been some angst about not having fans or limited fans and full, capacities in our venues. But, my goal was to have our teams on the floor playing. Different states handled the COVID issues differently. State of Texas has been a little bit more liberal than others. So our fans would watch, games and say, well, you're only at 20% capacity, you should be more. But again, there was a lot of collaboration as we all worked through this together. It was not only the Department of Athletics, but it was the university, it's our health department, everybody coming together to say what's the best for our community. And so we took some darts from people there that felt that we should have had more, but looking back, it was rewarding to turn on the TV and say, I'm watching a football game, I'm watching another basketball game, and saying we've continued to play, and that was our goal. And as you said, hearing the band behind you and music and the teams on the floor, that's pretty special, because a year ago we didn't know where this was all going to end up. And I look forward to next year being better. The vaccine is probably giving us a little hope as we go through our past year anniversary. No one's asked this question, but I did say it. You've seen it. Yeah, we're planning on 100% capacity, and I hope that's the situation that we're in next year. The big question is, what's the public confidence of people returning to arenas and stadiums and being part of that? But that's what our plan is moving forward. Obviously, if we have to shift plans as we move forward and get closer to that time period, depending on the other variants of the virus, and hopefully that's not the case. But we're ready to turn the page and start a new chapter, and hopefully the fall 21 season looks a lot better than fall 2020 season.
Any further questions for Shane? Members of the media, thank you very much for joining us on this Zoom call today. I hope this has been helpful to you. Shane, thank you very much. I know you and Kevin are in Kansas City. You guys be safe out there, and thanks again to everyone.
Thank you. Let's go Mountaineers.